All right, afternoon everybody. Nice to be here with you all and introduce you to Wesana, a data-driven life science company that I founded over a year and a half ago after my experience with the healthcare system the last 8 years and my brain health journey. So a little bit about my background. I'm Daniel Carcillo, CEO, founder, played 9 years in the NHL, 12 years professional hockey, was in the enforcer role. I fought over 164 times, and I received 7 diagnosed concussions, which forced me into early retirement in 2015. After my 7th diagnosed concussion, I was dealing with symptoms like light sensitivity, slurred speech, headache, head pressure, insomnia, impulse control issues, anxiety, depression on top of suicidal ideation. And I've just spent the last 8 years researching what had happened to me, and then trying different treatments to recover my brain health, all the while tracking them and just basically collecting the data needed to scientifically validate what has worked for me. So the picture you see here are QEEG images, basically measuring the electrical waves of my 6 different brain regions. The picture on the left was taken after a 5-year journey of doing functional neurology, visiting the best neurologists, concussion clinics, CTE brain banks, and doing things like neurofeedback and things that have some evidence behind them to basically bring my brain back online and help my symptomology. I got to a point where I spent $400,000 and I wasn't getting any better. And I started to see research coming out on psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms. And that early research anecdotally was saying that it could wake up right and left brain hemispheres and increase that neuronal crosstalk and really target neuroplasticity as a recovery tool. So I decided to go to a farm, take 5.6 grams. I took a picture on the left. I also knew that nothing gets fixed in 5 hours, so I went home with a microdose regimen, which is non-hallucinogenic, and I made it with a PhD biochemist, played with the protocols, the milligram amounts. 6 months in, retested my brain, got it back with no abnormalities, and so I started to scour to create a championship team. First and foremost, I filed IP on this novel and inventive way of getting better, and founded Wesana with a mission of helping people transcend barriers in mental health and performance. First thing that came into my life was my co-founder, Chad Bronstein, who's raised over $150 million for in highly regulated spaces like cannabis. Mark Wingerson, our Chief Scientific Officer, came to us through GSK, where he headed up their OTC and pharma division for over a decade and has been a part of 5 first-in-class drug indications like Tamiflu and Viagra. Abid Nazir, our Chief Medical Officer, we own and operate 3 clinics. So with this becoming what I think will be the new standard of care, there needs to be a clinical network and a foundation put in place to have these medicines delivered once we get them approved through the FDA. Currently, we're using FDA-approved ketamine in our clinics. Zed Wang, Chief Financial Officer, has a lot of deep knowledge about the Canadian market space and capital markets, and we are listed on the CSE and OTCQB. Meg Nagata, Chief Marketing Officer, came to us after building out Walgreens' clinical network, and Jeffrey Jewell, who works closely with Mark. I sourced a scientific advisory board that includes people from the concussion world like Dr. Frederick Carrick and Joseph Clark, to people from psychedelics like James Fadiman, and also Rachel Yehuda, who's the professor of psychiatry and neuroscience and the director of the Center for Psychedelic Psychotherapy at Mount Sinai, and Robert Kaufman, ultimately the epitome of who I think will flip from being a psychiatrist with the proper oversight to a psychedelic-assisted psychotherapist. He just finished his MDMA training. MAPS is in phase 3 with the FDA using MDMA for PTSD, and I'll show you some more information about that later in the presentation. But he headed up Walter Reed's Medical Center and is a former Navy man and a really good example of who we're going to target for these for this new clinical care. Mitch Kahn sold Grassroots Securely for over $1 billion, sits on our board. Robert sits on our board. Chad, myself, Ian Bernstein, and then George Steinbrenner IV, I'll touch on him. Associated with mental health comes stigmata as well as psychedelics. So we use people that have a lot of following in the athletic world, like Mike Tyson, who's an advocate for psychedelics, and Juliana Pena, the current UFC women's champion, and use their platforms to bust through the stigmata associated with psychedelics and mental health. So our approach, we're delivering on new care paradigms today as we develop novel treatments for tomorrow. We have two sides to our business, care development and care delivery. And the way that they're accretive to each other is they'll uncover new indications, we'll validate protocols, personalize treatment, and collect and integrate that data. So we'll start with care development. We have 2 provisional patents filed, one on TBI-related symptomology, so it has over 40 indications in that. It also has orphan drug, and it covers a novel delivery method and novel method of use as well. And we'll refine this IP as we work towards our novel formulation before we get into human in Q1 of 2023. We also have a patent on migraine, so 2 large markets with a considerable unmet need. And the novel method of use is using the high dose, which will be done in a clinic, of psilocybin, and then the low dose, which will be a self-administered at-home presentation in a lockbox, similar to how birth control is taken. So we use psilocybin and cannabinoid. Psilocybin's been approved FDA breakthrough therapy designation for 2 different companies already, and it's also in a phase 2B trial, the largest human study to date. Cannabinoid is an already approved FDA medicine in Epidiolex. So the reason that these 2, I believe, have worked for me, the psilocybin working on the 5-HT2A agonist receptor site, increasing that neuronal crosstalk and neuroplasticity, and the cannabinoid with their anti-inflammatory benefits and the protection against neuronal death. Cannabinoid, CBD specifically, is patented by the U.S. government, patented in 2003, specifically against anti-inflammatory and that neuronal death. Psilocybin has been shown to increase brain connectivity and resting blood flow in many clinical trials. It's been shown to have rapid effects on treatment-resistant depression. CBD is a patented neuroprotectant, and CBD and psilocybin independently have both been able to show significant effects on migraine days in clinical trials. So putting those together, we believe that we have something special. High-dose psilocybin in the largest human trial to date, COMP360, phase 2B study, you see rapid antidepressant effects, and then you have this waning effect. So essentially, you're taking somebody's depression away, but like anything, there's no magic bullet, and it wanes over time. So there's a need for the chronicity of therapy, and that's where the microdosing regimen comes in after a high dose. It was proven out in Carhart Harris's study in 2014, and we proved the same thing with our novel animal data done at a third-party independent lab in Charles River. So we've taken the protocol that worked for me, which is high doses of psilocybin in combination with a low-dose microdose in combination with a dose-dependent effect of CBD. We put that into a validated FDA tail suspension model, and we were able to show 64% improvement at the highest dose of CBD in depressive behavior in these mice. So novel proprietary animal data produced at Charles River, and really exciting and quite frankly, somewhat surprising results. The combination therapy is where we live and achieve our IP through these novel formulations because of the prior art that's associated with the 2 compounds that we're using. Our protocol innovation using high dose and low dose is novel and inventive. And the potential partnership with MAPS, who's in phase 3 with the FDA using MDMA for PTSD, is something that's ongoing to look at using MDMA for a TBI-related symptom and the analytical rigor with which we deploy. So our current strategy or I should say, former strategy before we had a meeting with the FDA, was TBI-associated MDD. We also have a pre-IND number on TBI-associated anxiety, and we also have a pre-IND number on migraine. So I'll just skip forward to the future state of our drug development and fill you guys in on the feedback from the FDA in our pre-IND meeting on March 11th. So the FDA said TBI-related MDD, albeit novel, is maybe too narrow. So they suggested that we move into a broader indication in major depressive disorder. So that was positive news. They accepted the pharmacology and toxicology program for the loading dose as well as the self-administered at-home presentation on your counter of the psilocybin and CBD combination. So that was also really exciting. They accelerated our program, so they told us that this may metabolize differently in healthy human beings, so we want you to go into your population in a phase 1b/2a study, which was impactful. And then they also knew about our pre-IND number on migraine. So they would like us to look at 3 orphan indications. They named the indications, and so we've since turned around since that meeting. We'll have IP filed by the middle of next month, and we'll bring along one of those orphan indications in parallel with major depressive disorder. So all in all, a very successful, exciting meeting because of how amendable the FDA seems to something like this. We're leveraging the 505(b)(2) pathway for CBD as well, and we leverage the IB, that's public knowledge, on psilocybin and the polymorph B trihydrous form. So we have this partnership discussion with MAPS. What I just described is WSANA 13, the novel psilocybin program. MAPS is in phase 3 with the FDA using MDMA for PTSD. In a 2-month follow-up after 12 weeks of psychotherapy and 3 administrations of the drug, 67% of the respondents in the trial no longer qualify for PTSD. So it has a massive public benefit. And will be something that will be extremely impactful for the veteran community and for mental health survivors. So we assess the viability through BCG report of using MDMA for a TBI-related symptom, and there is some crossover between PTSD and TBI. The report came back extremely favorable. What this will allow us to do is be in the market beside MAPS before the development of the psilocybin programs. And MDMA for PTSD will be the first classic psychedelic that will be approved for commercialization in 2024. So along the way, we purchased clinics. We purchased these clinics to be able to set the foundation for where these drugs will be administered and how they will be administered. So we integrated into psychiatry, so we have a mental health clinical network of psychiatry practices that are inclusive of classic medicine work and about a 60-40% split between administering ketamine and FDA-approved Spravato. And we've done over 4,000 ketamine treatments since inception in 2016. We're currently mining this outcome data to present to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois to get the same insurance remuneration for IV ketamine that Blue Cross Blue Shield Massachusetts enjoys. We have proprietary diagnostics, and we believe that this model is strategically positioned because of the capturing of all the patient insurance coverage to integrate into big healthcare. In January, we already sat down with HCA, Hospital Corporations of America, who are interested in doing a pilot program with us. So the mental health population is somebody that we target right now. We'll be targeting the TBI and concussion associated population with this build out of our 3rd clinic in Naperville that will be open May 1, and also looking to performance athletes and improving overall cognition and performance. This is a little look into our patient journey of somebody coming into our clinic. There's a referral and a digital front door. About 57% of the onboarding is done through telemedicine, so it makes it very, very seamless. They come in to the psychiatrist practice. We do baseline testing, cognitive testing, hormone testing, and then we plan treatment accordingly. So you essentially have to qualify personally for the regimen that we put you through. So it's a form of personalized medicine which we think is going to be the future, and it's exactly what patients really enjoy. So then you will either be prescribed psychiatry, ketamine, TMS in our new facility, which will see our margins go from about 15% to over 30%. And then you'll also be onboarded to a patient monitoring service. So we have a SaaS platform that integrates into a patient's wearable, so their Apple Watch or Fitbit or Garmin, and we track sleep, heart rate variability, as well as activity. We attach that tracking to a diagnosis, and if we see that the patient is moving towards a crisis area, then we're able to actually ping them through the app and get them back into the clinic for more treatment. There's obviously a lot of IP here, and we'll be continuing to file IP against the software tool of Wesana Solutions. Company highlights: we were founded in 2019. We've been able to achieve a lot in a very short amount of time on the drug development side as well as the clinic side. Our IP portfolio is continuing to expand, and we've had some pretty meaningful conversations with professional sports leagues where major depressive disorder as a whole is a big problem, to help input them into our trials and really just continue to create the awareness necessary as we continue to operate on the CSE and the OTC QB. All of the things that we're talking about right now, I believe, will become the new standard of care upon getting the proper regulatory approvals. We've engaged MHRA as well as the CTA and Health Canada. All of these discussions to date, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, have been extremely positive. And this is what a longer duration mental health clinic will look like, with proprietary diagnostics, supervised delivery of medicine, advanced therapies like self-deprivation tanks, hyperbaric chamber, and holistic tools that can be added on to increase the efficacy of a ketamine treatment or an MDMA infusion, as well as integrated mental and neurological health care, and leading with insurance-covered services so that we could pick this model up, and it can either sit outside of big healthcare and get the overflow or the denial, and also the patient access for a continuum of care. Just to give you a little insight into how long it takes for somebody to get into McLean's, it's over 3 months, and we get people in within 7 to 14 days. So it's something that I think could be complementary to them, and those discussions have already been meaningful, and we're excited to continue to bring on new indications and develop them through the FDA in parallel, we'll be able to share more information once our IP is filed, and we turn around with the same briefing booklet that they accepted for an orphan indication, and keep developing what I think and what I know to be true, the medicine of tomorrow. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Dan, thanks for coming. Can you walk through a little bit more about your personal experience? You mentioned it a few times.
Yeah.
Sort of your history of what led up to you even seeking treatment?
Yeah, for sure. As I mentioned earlier, played 9 years in the NHL and was obviously suffering from a lot of symptoms. A good day was 5, a bad day was 15 of them present. And I had a really close teammate who had 19 diagnosed concussions in the NHL pass away my last year in the NHL, and that really scared me into walking away, because I saw a lot of the same symptomology in myself that was present in him. There's a lot of talk, obviously, about repetitive head trauma, subconcussive, concussive hits being linked to neurodegenerative disease, and those are the symptoms that I was starting to have. So I started to seek out treatments from the best neurologists in the world. I went to Mount Sinai and John Crary's brain bank and just tried to understand what was happening, listen to these medical professionals tell me what they thought the key to recovery was, and then just kept spending my own money that I'd earned to gain healing first and foremost. And I was confident all the while that I was advocating for mental health and concussion advocates or survivors. I was confident I was going to find something. And in my darkest hour, when I thought I'd tried everything and nothing was working, I turned to an alternative treatment in psilocybin. So if you told me, 5 years ago that I'd be standing here cured because of magic mushrooms, I probably would have told you you're crazy. But it's essentially it's what's happened. Not only cured, I've never been more higher operating than I am today. So it's it's been a pretty amazing journey. Yep.
One more question. So what was the aha moment that made you decide to go and shift from being a patient to doing what you're doing now? Not everybody is treatment and then start growing a biotechnology.
Yeah, so I got this recovery, and then I started advocating for decriminalized nature and to get people just knowledge, hey, this worked for me, it could probably work for you. This is where to do it in a responsible manner. I testified in front of the DC Board of Elections for Initiative 81 and got everything decriminalized in partnership with a few veteran organizations and a mother that used it for postpartum depression. And I feel very passionately that, concussion survivors need a diagnosis and then they need it attached to a medication. And so my goal is to help millions of people before I die, and that's why I chose the path that I chose. And, one of my skill sets that I learned from hockey is just attention to detail, and then also, I'm sure everybody's first thought is, well, how could this guy be leading a life sciences company through the FDA, but I picked a really good team, and I stick to what I'm good at, and just allow my team the freedom to operate, and they've proven themselves numerous times, and we've been able to do a lot in a year and a half, and get into this pre-IND meeting with a very defined accelerated pathway forward, using 2 Schedule I compounds, albeit, one's an approved FDA medicine already, and the other's been designated, breakthrough therapy designation. So, it's, a personal mission, and if anybody has ever seen me fight on the ice, it's the same thing that I do on a daily basis for concussion survivors and mental health survivors. So we'll get it done, We'll definitely get it through. Anything else? Yeah.
Can you touch on the clinic expansion strategy and how many clinics do you expect to see in the U.S. and what is the cost to build up?
Yeah, so we did a de novo style for the 3rd clinic. We waited until we got the 2 clinics to 90% capacity. When we purchased them, they were only at 50% capacity. And we doubled the revenue month over month, and so that was really, when you have a 200-person wait list, it's time to expand. So we did de novo style we're going to average, I would imagine, $300,000 for the build out, and operating costs will be net positive within 4 months, and we'll be cash positive in all 3 of the clinics by December, and we're projected to do 4.7 USD in 2023 with all of the treatment options in the 3 clinics operating at in and around 70 to 80% capacity. So we've been having a lot of conversations, and it's funny, the arms race, if you will, for clinics is kind of heating up right now, and there's a lot of people that are interested in profitable models. Psychiatry is definitely going to be the preferred oversight when it comes to MDMA and psilocybin, and right now even ketamine, because you can do like buy build programs, and as long as you're using and capturing patient insurance, I think you're in a really good spot rather than being, a ketamine infusion center. And so we are actually having conversations of spinning this off to somebody and refocusing on drug development after the feedback from the FDA. It'll obviously help the burn of the company, and we'll just get a lot more defined with our pathway forward. Yeah, of course. Anything else, boys? Good? Cool.